Well, it's great to have you guys on the show. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to get into Californian sake. You guys are the first that I've ever had discussing that because I think you're the first people to ever make it. So I'm not sure. Who should we start with? Meryl or Ken? You guys decide.
Ladies first.
All right. Thank you, Ken. And look, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, Susan. We're not the first to produce American grown sake, but I think we are probably the first to really talk about it. So we're excited to talk about our new product and hopefully bring more people to the category.
Would love it. Who wants to start about talking about it?
Using Sake is something that Meryl and I and our co-founder Phil all have enjoyed forever, and we have a belief that it is one of the great misunderstood and unknown categories in the drinks space. Yeah, everyone's heard of it, but very few people actually understand it, and there are a lot of real misperceptions. And as we got together in the beginning of this deal, of this project, we set out to unlock the door of sake and to make it accessible to the average American or European or Western consumer. And what we found was that by and large, the sake category seemed to be cloaked in tradition. And while that seems very authentic, it may or may not be, because even if it's been brewed in California for 40 years, it's cloaked in Japanese labeling, and that's fine, but we felt it really wasn't making it accessible. And that was our entire mission, was to be the first estate grown sake, certainly from North America, and to bring it to the average consumer in an understandable and approachable way.
Now, there's
Wow.
tons to unpack there. So why don't we go?
Well, they're right.
No, are you kidding, Ken? I agree completely. If you remember, it was all about bringing that traditional Japanese heritage, the way it's processed, even down to the variety of rice that we grow was a traditional Japanese variety, just now grown in California. But it's also about adding kind of that twist on it and then opening or unlocking sake to the rest of the world, right? So I really think that there's so much there. People don't understand sake. They don't understand it. And so they're a bit scared or intimidated by it. And it's a drink that we feel like should be enjoyed at many more occasions than just traditional Japanese restaurants. So we want to make sure that we preserve the heritage and that we're respectful of the traditions around sake, but that we also unlock it to be an opportunity for people to enjoy across many different cuisines and many different occasions.
Now, yeah, it's fantastic. And so let's go back a little um, to how you both came to sake. So a little bit about your background, where you grew up, both of you, and how you came to create So Good.
Can you want me to start on this one? Okay, so honestly, Susan, my family's in the rice business. I've been in the rice business since I started. I'm second generation. We take rice from the farm to a finished product. But it was really my brother-in-law, who's our third partner, that introduced me to sake. They had been living in Los Angeles and, were, eating lots of Japanese cuisine on a regular basis. And so he would tell me on different, family outings or Christmas, "Hey, Meryl, like, why don't we get in the sake business? You're in the rice business. Why can't we be in the sake business?" And I would tell Phil, I'm like, "Look, Phil, like, I am not in the same type of rice business. Rice is not just rice. You have to grow particular varieties to produce really good sake." And the rice that we grow in the South, which is where I'm from, is not the right varieties for a really traditional, again, cloaked in that traditional type sake production. And so Ken and I have been friends for many years, and he'll tell you his background, but similar backgrounds to him being in California. And we were discussing at a conference, I said, look, my brother-in-law felt like he just loves this sake. What do you think about this? And he said, well, Meryl, I have been growing a lot of rice for the sake industry. And so that really kind of formed this perfect, relationship. The three of us got together and we said, look, we can bring our knowledge of the rice industry. Ken brings his knowledge of, the best growing sake varieties in the industry. And then Phil with his background in marketing and PR and all things kind of on that side. We just felt like it could be a perfect partnership for the future and to really bring this brand to life. So, Ken, is that how you remember the story?
Wait, hold on, Ken, for a sec. Where now you said you were growing rice. Where and it was from the South, but where exactly are the rice fields in the South? If for people who might not know.
Yeah, so Susan, I'm from Louisiana. So rice is traditionally grown in the U.S. in Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi. That's kind of the southern region, but also in California. But the California varieties are different than the varieties that we grow in the South. And so it's very similar. The production element is very similar and the type of milling activity we do is similar, but the varieties are different and they are for different markets.
And if you can, what were your rices for? Was it for table rice for people to, eat rice? Or
Traditionally
yeah,
in the South, the rice that is grown is a long grain variety, which is what you consider to be table rice.
okay.
Absolutely. It's found in many different cuisines, right? That you would enjoy. We also grow some other varieties in the South as well, but that's their traditional rice. Yes.
All right, cool. Now, Ken, tell us about your rice and how you came to it.
Susan, our family grows rice in the northern part of California. And as Meryl indicated, it's a different type than in the South. That rice is the number one calorie consumed every day on this planet. And so it is grown in a wide swath of the world, but it's grown in a belt. And so just like there's a coffee belt, and you can look at the map and see the coffee belt, and we don't grow coffee in the 48 states or Alaska, but it can be grown in Hawaii because that's down in the coffee belt. Similarly, rice sits in a belt sort of between the equator and up to around the 38th parallel. And then just as you tip over into the north of the 38th parallel, you can grow Japonica varieties, which are sticky and shorter grain, short and medium grain. And so Northern California is directly opposite Japan and Korea. And so we grow the same varieties. And we've traditionally supplied the Japanese food segment and the Korean food segments in North America. About 50 years ago, the Japanese sake brewers realized that there was demand in North America. This was in the early 70s. The demand for sake in North America in the early 70s was made up of Japanese populations in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and in New York City. But it's pretty expensive to ship bottles of liquid across from Japan and to even make it. And they realized they could make it in California because you brew sake like you brew beer.
Mm-hmm.
And beer is usually brewed locally. So you might buy what looks like Australian beer at the store, but it was probably brewed and shipped from Australia. You might buy Guinness that probably wasn't shipped from Ireland. You might buy sake in Japantown in San Francisco or Los Angeles, and it looks like it's from Japan. But unless you're really looking carefully and you see the product of the USA on the bottom, you might think it's from Japan. And that was the marketing strategy. They didn't want people to think it was from California. They wanted consumers to think it was from Japan. And that's part of that cloak is that it's all in kanji, it's all in Japanese characters. But the sake brewing has well over a 50-year history in California, and it's pretty well established.
I'm
So
glad you.
go ahead. So we buy rice. I grow the rice on our family farm. We grow a specific variety for sake. We mill it for the sake breweries, and I sell a lot of rice to a lot of sake breweries.
Now, in the intro, I told everyone that we had met at the Connaught with cocktails made from SoGood Sake. So they already know that we've met before. And I remember when you told us this story, and I'm so glad you brought it up because I was going to bring it up. And I was just gobsmacked. I just couldn't believe it because I had no idea. And I'm sure when you tell people this story, they really are also surprised that it is made in the US and what they're drinking potentially is, they're drinking sake, they're drinking it, and it was made in the US from US rice. I assume that when you tell people this, they are surprised if they
Very
don't
few
know.
people. Yeah, I would say that very few people realize.
Uh-huh. I think that anytime now when I'm going to go back, I'm going to look at the bottom of the sake bottles and see where it's made. So,
And a
all right.
lot from Ken's rice.
Yeah, well, cheeky question is, there's obviously they're making it. Why did you decide that you also wanted to make it and throw your hat into what was already a pretty established market of, Japanese sake?
I really
Crossing
think that it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that the marketing of sake in the U.S. and in England and in Europe. Well, let me say that again. I think it's the marketing of sake in the West was very traditional and was creating a real barrier for the average consumer. And even people who like sake and who profess to love it and order it when they go out, and I would say, "Oh, that's marvelous news. Tell me, what's your favorite label?" And I'm thinking, yeah, if you're going to say what's your favorite wine, you might say, Mondavi or Stag's Leap or something. And I'd say, what's your favorite label in the sake space? You love to drink it. And they'd say, oh, I love Junmai Daginjo. No, that's not a label. That's like saying I like Chardonnay. And I think, great. What's your favorite label? They have no idea because they couldn't read it. And so we decided to come in and say, we can present this to the market and in an understandable and an approachable way. And I think what I remember, Meryl, is we really talked about the balance between respecting the traditions and smashing the tradition.
Absolute. Yeah.
How could we strike that balance? And we came up with a real central part of our vision and our ethos is our tagline that says, make your own traditions.
So even the way, sorry, Susan, but
No, go ahead.
Even the way that we present it, the type of glassware, right? So again, in traditional sake consumption, it is a certain type of vessel that it's served in. And the typical U.S. consumer considers that if it's served as something that looks like a shot glass, that the alcohol content which must be very high, right? But that's not the case. It's not much more than wine. So it's not a high ABV type alcohol, right, that should be consumed in just small amounts. And that really opens up the door for potentially cocktails or to drink it over the rocks or even in a wine glass, right? So now you've really opened up a lot of different occasions when, really, again, traditionally it was served in a very particular type vessel. So those are just examples of things that we've done that we feel like are really breaking down barriers.
Let's go back to, so you had the idea, because I love the story of how it all started, and you had this idea to do it. And did you know what kind, there are about 8 varieties of sake, and, which one you wanted to start with, how to find production to do it, that whole process. Talk me through that. I mean,
Well,
either one
because
of
I
you.
mean, Ken, you can answer this, but
Mhm.
because Ken's, deep knowledge in this industry already, I mean, we had really an insider track, frankly, to, the production side. I mean, Ken and his family have been producing this particular strand of rice for many years now and selling to several different breweries. So we really understood the market, understood the production, and that side of it. Ken, you might want to add something here, but to me, that's really our one of our biggest strengths is that, and then frankly, I mean, Ken, Phil, and I all love sake. So we were pretty adamant that the juice better be pretty good, right? And if we want to bring people into the category that we hope that immediately after they taste it, they realize, wow, this is a lot different than the sake bomb that I had in college. This is something that I really enjoy and that could be, drinking at many different occasions.
Uh-huh.
That's right. I think that it was an easy discussion for us to decide that we were going to use Yamada Nishiki, which is the variety of
Of
rice,
course.
that we were going to present it as that we were going to grow it our own and be estate supplied and in the state sake. And we did talk about the different types of sake that one can make, ginjo and daiginjo, and Meryl's exactly right. We gave some thought to that, but we wanted sort of an above average sake. We didn't try to go, you can really go sky high and try to make the double super premium, but then that was countered to the vision of saying, well, if we want it to be approachable, the price needs to be approachable too.
Right.
And so finding a way to say, hey, we want a really good experience for the person, when they have put it in their cart and order the bottle. We want a good experience for the consumer who drinks it sort of traditionally, which I would say would be neat. And we wanted a good experience for the mixologists and the bartenders when they set out to make cocktails of a variety of anything they want to do with the same juice. So it's really, I think, where we were trying to hit that trifecta.
And how long did it take to get from idea to bottle?
Maybe
18
about a
months?
year, Ken?
Maybe 18 months?
Yes.
So pretty
We
quickly.
spent a lot of time revolving around the creation of the bottle and how we wanted the bottle to look and feel. And this goes back to, I talked a little bit about the types of glasses we encourage people to consume sake in being, different. Well, our bottle is definitely different too. And so that did take time. We developed a preparatory bottle and then, putting that in production was, also presented some challenges, but we were able to work through that. We wanted it to look like a combination of what already existed, but also could be used as, a substitute for a vodka or a gin.
Hold on.
Um,
Let me get the bottle down.
yeah.
Oh, hold on.
So we wanted it to be beautiful on the back of a shelf, right? Like if you're a bartender and you're certainly
not
not.
behind you. Yeah, we wanted
Or-
to look good on the back bar.
Yep. So we really designed it to think about the back bar and not
Huh.
necessarily to be hidden. And then it is a wine, so many sake producers put it in a wine bottle. But again, that's a bit confusing to consumers. What is sake, right? It's brewed like beer. It is a wine, but then it can be used as, a low ABV option.
We think it's a spirit,
Cocktails.
it's a spirit substitute.
Yeah.
Only
So
it's it.
it is one of the most versatile, if not the most versatile alcohols there is, in our opinion, and is totally underutilized.
Hold on.
So
We'll get
Mhm.
to the cocktails in a sec.
Yeah.
But since I have the bottle in hand, let's kind of go through it. I know Ken, when we met, I grilled you on this. So I love the story, and it's a great bottle. So you went with this shape. Tell me about the first
It's been
shape.
beautiful. I just smile every time I look at it.
It's the Kyle. It's beautiful colors. I like it as well. So why don't you kind of talk me through, because I know everything is significant and it would be fun for everyone to hear what it is.
Yeah. Can you start this time?
Well, I think that I'll start with Meryl and Phil and I spent probably 2 full days with the design team. And that was an education for us. They spent the first day, as I remember, just talking, asking us questions, trying to figure out what our vision was. The second day, I felt like I had gone back to kindergarten with my children. And they got there, and they had piles and piles and piles of old magazines. And they sat us each at a table with a pair of scissors. And they said, you just go through this magazine and you cut out the pictures of anything that makes you think of, your vision for this sake. And then here's a glue stick, and you're going to glue these pictures to this board. And I didn't kindergarten. But anyway,
Love it.
we got these. So pretty soon I had my storyboard and Phil had his. And of course, we're being competitive. And Meryl's was better than either of ours, but that was okay. And then we had to get up and tell this company of designers why this was my vision or why this is Meryl's. And they seamlessly kind of took all of that and assembled it. And we came back about a month later, and they said they didn't have a name yet, but they had this design. And we all loved it. And they said, well, what is it? They asked us, what do you see? And we saw different things. And they said, that's successful because you said you wanted people to look at sake and see different things, see it their way. So there isn't a right answer.
I love that. Do you remember the different ways? I know it was a while ago, but do you remember specifically,
I can
like,
tell
Ken, what
you
you saw?
something now. I hate to give it away because I want people to see it for themselves.
Just give away
But
as
I'll
much as
give
you
you
want
a
to.
Most people, in my experience, then the one that pulls the highest, people see a surfboard here,
Okay.
and they see some
so
people see the sun, some people see the moon. I'm sure we can unpack that, and when they see a surfboard, then they often see waves or the beach. But we see a beach towel laying on the beach and the surfboard standing in front of the. See, it's really interesting.
I feel what I should tell you before you say, Meryl, what you see, or what I should tell you what I see, probably.
Not then please.
And I think I saw it like this before. I know I've seen it, it's been here, I've seen it a lot, but I saw that as a grain of rice.
Yeah.
And I saw that as the sun.
Yeah.
And I saw that as maybe the layers of, I've never seen how rice is grown in California. I'm just kind of assuming that it looks like, because I have seen it grown in, like, actually in Myanmar and in Vietnam. And so that to me kind of is these layers of ground that you put or water that you put the rice into to grow. That's what I see. And this
you
is
were
kind of
pretty close to
I love that. I'd never heard these described as kind of the waves of grain or the whatever in the feel. So I love to add that to the mix of what's there. A lot of the people see
maybe rice
rice.
grains up here.
A lot of the people see a kernel of rice and a sun, a moon, and then, what are those? I don't know. So I have heard that this is a cracker and that this is a piece of sushi. And they think of chopsticks. Okay.
All right.
I like that.
Let's go with the theme.
And then there's a more technical vision of it, which is this is a grain of rice when you start. And then when we mill rice for sake brewing, we keep milling off these ends until you wind up with a round grain. That's called a pearl in the business. And then the pearls get put into the sake. And then, I don't know what the lines are in that. In that example, but
that makes sense. I mean, this obviously they knew you were from California. Then the surfboard makes sense. Now, how about the colors? The gold and the blue.
Meryl, those on you.
Meryl,
Well, we have another one that we have not launched yet. I won't tell you what colors it is, but it is a different color, right? This is a more premium product, and so we wanted it to feel that way. Um, this one also is supposed to be kind of night kind of envisioned, right?
Okay.
But in our opinion, again, we were thinking of the back of the bar behind the bartender, right? And so many times they have the type of lights that pick up on those gold tones, right? So that also kind of fed the vision. But rice is traditionally seen as the golden harvest. So when it is harvested, it has a golden nature. And so there's a tie to gold with that as well. And then again, this one is the more premium. So the navy was chosen to kind of tend towards night, where maybe the other one would tend towards day, right? So, okay. So this is, again, it's hard to know that on
Well, no,
play,
you're right. I've forgotten a little bit about that.
but that is supposed to be a representation of the moon, where the other one would be a representation of the sun, right? So again, the idea is
It's night surfing.
yeah. So, but definitely, we're not upset when people say that they see the surfboard because,
No.
again, it was supposed to be that, even though it is a grain of rice. I mean, honestly, it's a grain of rice. But the idea was that it could be that California culture, right? That
I
allowed
think
you
it's
to
like the full board. We disagree on this. Meryl.
yeah. Well, this was on the board, right? But again, the California surf culture added into this lifestyle of being a little bit different or edgy or cutting through tradition, right? All kind of you know is what we are about, right? So that, and then of course the product is grown in California, brewed and those kind of things on the West Coast. So just adds into the storyline.
Right. So you had to throw a surfboard in there.
Yeah, and then if you look at the back is
Yeah.
really kind of amazing too. I see you showing that, but it tells you about the flavor profile. This is something that no other sake is doing, right? They're not telling you what you're about to experience. So we wanted it to have that element of wine, and we had to provide that education to the consumer because the consumer's not educated on sake, right? And so we felt like, adding in a little bit of that helped consumers hopefully kind of understand what they liked in a sake. Because sakes are not made equally and they have different floral notes or they have different, earthy notes, just like wine. And, I think that was that kind of bridge on the back
Yeah,
that
I
was
think that's
supposed
good.
to, again, give consumers a little bit more about the product that they're about to drink.
For people who might not be able to see it or just listening out on YouTube, there's flavor, aroma, and serve. So, it's great for someone who just picked it up because they might like the bottle. They saw sake. They saw it said so good. It's right there how they can serve it and everything. Now, the name.
Yeah, I'm about to
So
say we
good.
haven't even talked about the name.
I know the so good. The name. I know usually we start with the name, but we started with the bottle. That's all right. Now, so good.
Susan, it's really pretty hilarious how we name this product. The company that Ken has referred to came up with a list of many names. And every time we would drink it, we would think, gosh, it's just so good. This is just so good. We just love this. This is so fucking good. And so my sister-in-law actually said, why don't you just name it So Good? And at first you were like, yeah. But in the end, it really fit the product more than any of the other names that, this design company or this branding company had come up with, in our opinion. And also just kind of fit the way that three of us felt about it. We really just loved the product. We were very, very proud about the juice that we had created. And we wanted other people to experience that. And so when people think about sake, they just want to make sure that the sake that they're going to buy is good in a way, right? Because they've had these pretty poor experiences with low end sake. And we think about it a little bit like how tequila was. Can you remember, this idea that you have tequila shots and everybody just gets drunk? And sake has a little bit of that reputation, and we want to, end that reputation of the sake bomb culture, right? Where you just take a bunch of shots to get drunk. And
And
there's,
I think right on that, you talked earlier about people. I think the perception of tequila 40 years ago was Jose Cuervo in a shot glass.
of course.
And the perception of sake is it's served in these little cups, often ceramic. It's served in these, it's not, you don't see a big carafe of it. It comes in these small ceramic carafes and served in little cups. So it must be like tequila. And
Yep. And then when they created the sake bomb, when Japanese restaurants, sushi was just becoming popular in the US, they just added fuel to that.
That's right. And so the fact that it's the same alcohol as a fortified wine, that it's 15% alcohol, is a surprise. And why is it served, we ask, in these small cups in Japan? It's a tradition. It's about Japanese hospitality and a centuries old tradition of being the host and making your guests as comfortable as possible. And so one of the traditions is you never pour your own sake. And so the host will never allow your glass to be empty. And if it's a big glass, they pour it every once in a while, they might forget. If it's small, every time you take a sip, they pour it a little more. You don't really notice how much you're drinking. Your glass never gets empty, and it's all very polite. That's the reason they serve it in small glasses, not because of the alcohol content, because of a centuries old, lovely tradition of hospitality and manners.
Absolutely. Now, when we had it, as I said, at the Connaught, which was glorious, and Giorgio had made some cocktails. And also, I'm just harping back to something that you said about it being a spirit replacement. So when you created it, obviously you want it drunk by itself, but also I assume you were always thinking about it putting it in the hands of the bartender. So how did that evolve? How did we evolve to being to sitting at the Connaught and having Giorgio create those wonderful drinks?
Well, we always had three taglines, which were, we already talked about make your own traditions. And then we have a tagline called drink differently. And it evolved in a conversation that I actually was having with Giorgio at the Connaught years ago when this was all in development. And I was sitting with him and I said, we're developing a sake. And he said, oh, get it. This is, yeah. He was so excited about it. And he was probably the one that put it in our minds, or in my mind, at first, was to say, I would love to experiment with sake in cocktails. And he said, Augustino and I really have a passion for, of course, mixology, but for using ingredients where they know the story and the provenance of the product.
Uh-huh.
I'm not just buying any old tonic water or buying any old vodka. And so the notion, they had never had any connection to sake. And the notion that here was a longtime friend where there's a really legitimate connection excited them. And that brought us back. And I said, hey, this is part of why we want to do this. Well, I think the description that he and I hit on, that we've all talked about, is one, rice is, it sits underneath a very expensive piece of tuna or salmon
Uh-huh.
or fish, and it supports it, but it doesn't compete with it. It has to have a high quality texture, and it has to have a nice subtle flavor. But the point of eating that piece of sushi or that California roll is the tuna or the crab or the salmon. It isn't the rice. If the rice fails, then it's raw.
Right.
Sake sits the same way because it's a rice base. It sits in the cocktail, but it doesn't compete with the other ingredients. And so we describe it as it's the bartender's whiteboard. The bartender can start with this, and go in any direction that she or he wants. But that's where it really started.
Yeah. Really, since then, too, low ABV cocktails have become very, very popular. People are drinking less, or they're wanting to drink, in different ways. And so, again, drink differently, to Ken's point. So sake allows you to do that, but to also, have that kind of neutral flavor, Susan.
I think that will also be very surprising to my listeners as well, because I also, before I started the podcast and got into the drinking world, assumed that sake was really high in alcohol. And now having Ben, who created Seedlip, on the show, and learning all about non-alcoholic spirits and low alcohol spirits and the way that the trends are going, even just the past 5 years, 10 years, not even 10 years of people drinking so much more low alcohol based cocktails. It's a brilliant thing to drink. And you couldn't have had better people help you create cocktails than those two. I mean, Ago and Giorgio are two of the best in the world.
Oh, they're the best, right?
Yeah.
And, on top of that, we didn't even really talk about the fact that sake doesn't give you a hangover. It really, because rice is gluten-free, it really doesn't have the tannins that you see in wines, right, from grapes. So there's a no hangover effect from sake that's really kind of incredible, if you want to ask me. And so there's not enough talk around that. But if you don't want to, a massive headache the next day, you want to enjoy something,
Yeah.
have, it's one of, to me, the best buses in alcohol. And I just really feel like people don't realize that, Susan.
And you can make a few of your cocktails that you have, in the book and that I'll have on my site. You can have a few of them and try different ones during the night without thinking, oh,
They're
I'm
not
having
switching alcohol, so you can go from a sake married to a sakatini. That's right.
Absolutely.
Losing the great takeaway that Meryl's point is that it's such a clean product. That's why we have an experience where you generally wake up in the morning feeling pretty good, because it's only rice and water and koji, which is, in layman's terms, essentially the yeast. It's the agent. That's it. We're not adding a bunch of other stuff. Nobody is.
When when Giorgio was creating the cocktails, was there anything that surprised you, as in maybe flavor combinations that you had never thought of? Was everything a surprise, or?
I think what has surprised me, Susan, is across London and even in North America, but I'm really in the London market, so I'll speak to that. But across London, every bar that brings it on, watching those bartenders play with the whiteboard for a mixologist to come up with cocktails, it surprised me how much fun they are having with it. It surprises me just the incredible range, and it seems rather limitless. It's just limited by the creativity and the imagination of the bartender. We have people in our office who suddenly come to the office and say, "Hey, I was screwing around with this last night, and I put in this and I put in that, and it's great." And people are making up their own drinks, and I love it.
You mean to say it's so good?
It's so good.
It's so
Kid,
good.
is it 5 o'clock somewhere? It is so good.
It is. It is 5 o'clock. Maybe I should open this up.
It's really.
It's 5 to 5 right where I am.
Yes, it is. Oh gosh. Also, what I wanted, I forgot something. Now I remember it. For those people who are drinking it neat, I know that you can drink different kinds of sake with different kinds of food. Is there any guidance, or do you think it goes with everything neat? Pizza, sushi.
Susan, the world is your oyster, as they say here in Louisiana, right?
And I'm going to start right with that answer. Oysters are the ideal. There's actually scientific reason that sake goes well with oysters. I'm not a scientist, so I can't quote it. we can get it up. Drink it. Here's my guidance. You can drink warm champagne, but I'm not sure why you would. Drink it cold.
Okay.
Make it cold. Drink it cold. On the rocks, really chilled, not on the rocks. If you don't want to use it as in a mix and you just want to drink sake, drink it cold, like you drink your champagne.
I always tell people too, if you've never drinking sake before, have that first sip. It's such a different experience that make sure that you have a second sip, right? Because it coats your palate differently than most. And it's just like red wine the first time you drink it. I mean, most people don't remember that anymore because red wine has become part, of kind of an ordinary, at least here in America, most people have drinking a red wine. That wasn't always the case, right? So when first, you've experienced something a little new, it's kind of like, oh, like, what is that taste, right? That second sip, you'll be hooked for life.
Did you hear that? Second sip, you'll be hooked for life. Are there anything else that we should know about So Good before I let you guys go and drink it since it's 5 o'clock? Meryl, any other stories?
Susan, I hope that at least after this interview, people are introduced to a different category that they never even thought about before, right? And that they're encouraged to try something new, to drink differently. And, sake is a beautiful in many different forms and fashions. So don't be intimidated by it. Think about it, when you're going to the beach the next time, or maybe, we've created some incredible fall type recipes. So, any type of occasion is the right occasion for sake. So I hope that, after this, you go and get a little bit, the itch to explore other options.
Cool. Ken?
Yeah. In addition to making your own traditions and drinking differently, I'm really advocating right now, give differently. So it's great to go to someone's home, as we all do, for dinner or Christmas parties or holiday parties, and you bring a bottle of wine, you give them a bottle of wine. Show up with a bottle of sake, give differently, because guess what your host is going to say? Wow. And they're not going to wonder who gave them that bottle. They'll remember it.
That's right. And if you can't find it, you can always buy it on our website. So to the audience, if you know where to buy it, go to our website.
Yeah, there'll be links to that, so don't worry about that. Ken, just following up on what you've just said, that kind of harks back, even though you're doing things differently, California state of mind, all of that, it does hark back to the traditions of sake, where you don't pour it for yourself. It is kind of a gift that you are giving, those little cups are being refilled. So that's a really lovely way to end, do give it to someone, because it is part of the tradition of sake to be giving it to people.
Absolutely.
So on that note, I will leave you to have a good weekend. And I so thank you for being on the show. As I said, it's great to have a Californian, to talk to some Americans about something that we're producing over there that people wouldn't expect. So thank you.
It was so good to be with you.
You too.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.